we were closing. We, within week, 2 weeks, put a whole curriculum together to go online for the fourth quarter. And we have continued to do that over the summer. And we continue to meet the demand that our district and school-based leaders are asking of us. And we, at this point, need help from our state officials to be the leader that we need them to be. We need to know that our education budget is okay, because we need to know that we can have the staff there to serve our students. We continually rise to the challenge. We continually step up. We are working double time to provide the quality education that our students deserve in Polk County and across the state. And we need your help. We need your help to make this work. We need the mandates to be on our side and on our kids' side, not just in the blind, pursuant of testing, of cutting our funds, and this threat that just looms over us. We need your help. We need to know that we are valued. We are the ones that are making this economy work right now. We saw in the spring that education is vital to the running of our economy. And if that's what we need as a state, you need to support your education staff professionals. You need to support your teachers. You need to support your principals, and you need to support your districts. Because honestly, your districts are floundering, and it's your fault. You're the ones that have put us in this position. You have put school boards in a bad position. You have put districts in a bad position, and it's just rolling downhill. People are quitting. People are going on leaves of absence, and that leaves our students without certified teachers, without certified education staff professionals to provide the needs that they deserve. We need your help.
Thank you, Stephanie. Next, we're going to have Angie Gallo, who is a school board member from Orange County Public Schools. Angie, if you'll unmute yourself.
Thank you, Andrew, and good morning, everybody. As Andrew stated, I'm Angie Gallo. I serve District 1 in Orange County Public Schools. I just wanted to take a moment and thank everybody who's on the call today, and thank all of our teachers who've done an amazing job in such uncertain and unprecedented times. I mean, we're so proud of our amazing teachers and our students and our parents who've worked really hard to get to where we are today, and it hasn't been easy. They've learned different platforms. Parents have had to step in to be teachers. It's hard right now, and it's taken a toll on our children, not only academically, but emotionally, and we can't lose sight of that emotional toll, which is why we really need to continue funding through June of 2021. We need to be held harmless for funding. We need to keep the FTE projections the way they are and the FEFP intact. And I understand that this is a heavy lift, that this is a big ask, because as a state, the economy is not great right now, but we need to work together. We need to be thought partners. We're all in this together, and only together will we get through this. So we just need to join together and do the best that we can. And I just want to say in closing that I'm so proud. I'm so proud of my teachers. I'm so proud of my district, and I'm so proud of everybody who stepped up to the plate and really knocked it out of the park during this difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. I appreciate that. Next, we're going to go to Dan Smith, who is president of the Seminole Education Association.
Thank you, Andrew. Well, just regarding the issues with the funding and the resources, and really the problems with trying to do an online and in-person simultaneously, it's unfortunate, because this is something that the teachers really weren't aware of that was going to be statewide or district-wide at the beginning when they agreed to do it. And teachers by nature are very compassionate people, and their goal is they want to get back to their children. So I mean, when you consider the fact that we're doing both online and having students at the same time, it's just not the nature of classroom teaching at all. It was originally done so they could transition their kids back in 9 weeks to face-to-face. But unfortunately, after a week, with the large class sizes, because we're not hiring enough teachers, parents started changing their kids, and it was almost a mass exodus of going back in. And the schools, unfortunately, just weren't prepared to have this. And this results in high class sizes. I think many across the state know that in the elementary, you've got almost the same size face-to-face classes as you've always had, plus an additional 3 to 5 remote. In the 6 through 12s, it's even worse. You could have double. You could have 25 in a class and another, 20, 25 working remotely at the same time. We've seen some extremes that we've had. For instance, a middle school PE teacher has 480 students, another art teacher 330 students. It's very difficult. The consequences, unfortunately, is these high numbers without funding and hiring more teachers is going to result in learning problems. So instead of hiring and splitting the numbers, the burden is going to fall on the teachers, which are getting frustrated. And the consequence of that is we've had at least 19 teachers just quit. We had one yesterday, just after 3 days of working, just couldn't take the numbers. It's a tremendous amount of stress on the teachers, and their working hours doubled. And to make it even worse, unfortunately, a lot of our teachers are being recorded, which is scary. And it's still unusual, but that's one of the nightmares. I think ultimately the district has the intention of educating children, but if you're going to commit to opening the schools, you have to commit the resources to make it happen. You can't just make it superficial, or it's going to wind up nearly fanciful, which is what we're in right now. The funding has to come. Our district and many districts are holding back on funding, expecting a big cut. So, the Department of Education has to realize if they want to have the schools open, which is great, they have to put the money and resources into it. And that's what we're hoping for. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. Next, we're going to go to Shelley Andraza, who is a parent and the PTA president in Seminole County. Shelley?
Hi, thank you for having me. So my son is 11 years old. He's in 5th grade. He has autism. So he is both in general education and a separate ESE classroom. We have been doing Connect now for about a month. Our district did a great job of giving our families options. We did have 4 options in our district, so that was very much appreciated. Due to medical issues, I ended up having to do Connect. First 2 weeks was very difficult. We had a lot of crying, him and me. He has slowly been adjusting. We're definitely still struggling. I have to sit with him from 8 a.m. in the morning until 2:15. I cannot leave him alone at all. About a week ago, I had an important meeting I had to attend. It was during specials, and the way that the specials is set up in our county, it is a simple click of a link. So we practiced, and I was like, okay, you can do this. You've got this. I did my meeting. I came back, and I instantly knew that there was something wrong. His face was super red, and he just started crying, hysterical. I ended up having to hold him and rock him for a while to get him to calm down. He got confused and he couldn't find the link. So it's definitely been a struggle. Sorry, I took notes because I tend to ramble and I go off on tangents. So Jordan's ESE teacher has been amazing. She has to remember the color of notebooks so she can remind the kids which one they need to open. They're having to explain how to open pages, where links are, and share screens just to get our kids on the right file, as well as open separate meeting links to meet the IEP accommodations that a lot of our children have. Our kids are having to navigate between tabs, click on embedded links in passages, and fill out documents with text boxes. My son recently deleted a text box by mistake, and that was a whole different disaster because his anxiety took over and he is so concerned about doing something wrong and messing something up. So I had to add the text box and told him it is okay, but it is a lot on our kids. They're definitely struggling. There have been a couple positives. He has learned to zoom in on screens, and he is able to turn in his work virtually now. Some of the experience has helped him learn new skills, so that I do appreciate that aspect of it. A lot of our parents have had to quit jobs to sit next to our kids during school. I have quite a few families that have quit have had to quit. They just didn't have any other options. So I will say though, our teachers have done a great job of adjusting. This was semi-expected, but at the same time, I think we thought it was going to last a shorter amount of time. So I think we thought that we were going to, have a difficult couple of weeks, but we were going to kind of get back on track. And this is taking a lot longer, and our schools are definitely in need of the funds to make sure that they can not just do what they need to do this year, but they can plan for, the rest of the year. So our district has done an extremely, they've been really flexible with parents. So I do really appreciate that. They've listened to our needs, our concerns. And so as a parent, I see the need for funding and flexibility for our local leaders to make decisions that affect our families and students. So I definitely would love our state to recognize that our superintendents, our school board members, our teachers, our principals, they're the ones that should be the ones making these extreme decisions for our kids, because all of our counties are different. All of our kids are different. They learn differently. So I would like to see us, our counties be given more power and be able to spend that money where they need it. So that's it.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Shelley. Next up, we have Ron Pollard. Ron is the president of the Orange Educational Staff Support Association, Support Professionals Association. So, go ahead.
Right. Well, thank you, President Spar, for including ESP, Education Support Professional, in this most important conversation. I just want to say, even before the pandemic, education support professionals from every state, every corner of the state, have been severely underpaid. Like so many other workers in our nation, these dedicated professionals carry the stress of how they're going to make ends meet, when coupled with just how important of the job of keeping safe, the students safe, and the districts operating smoothly. And it's always been a high stress environment. Now with COVID-19 has further compounded this anxiety, because fear of reduced hours, reassignment of work site, and even most dreadful, a layoff, keep many ESPs up at night. Even as they perform their duties, support staff have to deal with the lack of proper PPE, less than effective cleaning supplies, and very little training on how to deal with this virus. But the stress doesn't just impact the employees and their families. This stress might impact the services and education our students are provided, as less employees are available at a time when our kids need our services the most. We need clear and concise directions from the district and from the state on how to protect them and ourselves. I urge the Florida legislators and the governor's office to maintain the current budget for this school year. Any cuts are short-sighted. We must continue to invest in Florida's future by investing in education. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Really appreciate that. And just to let everyone know, when we talk about our education staff professionals, we're talking about bus drivers, custodians, cafeteria workers, our front office staff, our paraprofessionals, and so many others who really help make the system operate. So I appreciate those comments, Ron. Next up, we're going to have Amy, I'm going to mispronounce your name, I think, Amy Volpe, who is a parent in Seminole County. Did I do it wrong?
No, actually, you pronounced my last name right. That's a first.
All right.
For somebody to get it right the first time. I'm a parent of a 6th grader in Seminole County. She is actually face-to-face. Unfortunately, she was sick for about a week and was home, not with COVID. It was bronchitis and strep. So your typical normal things that go around every year. And I did get to see what it would be like for her to attend Connect. There were times where she was dismissed from class because the class was going outside and doing something or doing something else. She had one class that took her almost all week to figure out how to even log in to get it. So, and I can tell she's in gifted, but this year I can see there's something different. Her anxiety is heightened. She's struggling in school. She's struggling to get the help in school. And I can see that the teachers are just online when they're just stretched very thin, and all that anxiety that they're facing, the kids are sensing it. They're in their heightened anxiety. This isn't good for the emotional well-being of anybody involved, and it's heartbreaking. And I don't know what the answer is, but it doesn't seem like this is working. So that's just my piece on the situation.
Thank you, Amy. Very valuable. I appreciate that. And it also reminds us that there's more out there than just COVID. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our next and final speaker is going to be Antonio White. Antonio is the Vice President of the United Teachers of Dade. Antonio, if you'll unmute yourself.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Andrew, for having me a part of this conversation. You know, in Miami-Dade County, Dade and Broward County, we represent about 25% of the state's population of children. And right now, we just coming out of being the epicenter of this disease in the state of Florida, our teachers are really stressed and concerned when it comes to making this transition, moving from digital back to face right now. And some of that animosity, it comes from the lack of transparency in the data that we're getting. You know, as educators, we believe in science and we believe in data. But this administration and this government has been, you know, suppressing that data, not allowing that data to be given publicly, where parents and teachers should have this data so they can make proper decisions. You know, we were given only two options by the governor in his executive order for online learning for a district this size. That was the K-12 system in Florida virtual. And the K-12 system turned out to be an absolute disaster here in the largest district in the country. We represent about 350,000 students here in Miami-Dade County. We moved school back a week so that we can provide additional training to our education workforce to be able to work this system, and the system never functioned properly even from the beginning. So most of our anxiety in this county comes from a rush to in-person learning. And we want to take the politics out of these type of decisions, because they continue to talk about students' learning gaps widening and widening and widening. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, those learning gaps have been widening for over 50 years. We always find a way to minimize those learning gaps, and we'll do so now. But what we can't do is resuscitate life. And we know when we put kids back in the buildings, we force everybody back in the brick and mortar situations, we already know what the spread's going to be. Here in Miami-Dade County, as a matter of fact, you know, right now, yesterday, as a matter of fact, we had another 448 new cases, another 22 deaths. We're in this county already 166,000 cases so far. Our positivity rate over the last 14 days, according to the data we have, is declining, but we're still over 5%. Our sister counties next door in Broward, their daily positivity rate is about 3.25%, and is actually a little bit lower in Palm Beach County, but yet we're all being able to move, being forced to move in cycles. And coincidentally, the target date for Dade and Broward County happens to be October the 5th. And I say coincidentally because that happens to be the same week of FTE. And in that order, you did make some good statements, but those things had some not so good intentions that came out of them. You ensured funding initially to get us past the election, but you also indicated in that same order that funding would be reconsidered once we got past the new year. You know, threats of that nature to force somebody to do something to secure their funding that you still will leave yourself the opportunity to take back in the end only creates more angst and anxiety amongst our employees. We know we're already understaffed. You know, Florida already has a shortage of teachers. That's no secret. We've had an exorbitant amount of teachers that simply quit, retired early, and the bunch that are still looking for a way out. You know, we're being asked to go to the district now to try to negotiate how people can get out the system early because they can't necessarily get the support that they need. ADA is slow. People are applying, but they're not getting done. So there's a wealth of things that are taking place within a community that should be at ease. Listen, our working conditions have always been our students' learning conditions. And when our teachers are stressed out and they're facing mental health and anxiety, that transitions to the classroom, whether they realize that or not. And these are some of the things we need to correct if we're going to get the best education possible for this 2020-21 school year. So quite frankly, I just want to make sure that the governor and the commissioner of education understands that this is not a political event. This is a pandemic. This is a social economic event that we must correct. Drop the politics. Let's do what's best for children, and let's make sure we can provide the education that we promised in the state of Florida. In Dade County, we have a slogan, say we offer our children the world. We can only do that if we're able to go back in our schools safe and secure and make sure they remain healthy and able to learn.
Thank you, Antonio. Appreciate those comments. And so let me end before we open to questions and just say this. What we've heard from everyone on this call, from our parents, from the school board members, and from our leaders around the state, is it truly takes the community coming together to support our schools. And we need the leadership from the state level and the mechanisms in place to ensure security and safety of funding and of the people in our schools. I want to just take a moment and share with you all that this morning at 5:18 this morning, I got an email from a teacher in Loxahatchee, Florida. This teacher is almost 64 years old. She's been teaching for 34 years. She is in her final year of teaching. Because of her age and some medical conditions, she's considered high risk. Her district was not able to find a way to keep her on remote. And she has been told that she has two options: risk her life or retire early. That is what so many teachers and staff have experienced around this state. That is why today we are emphatic as we call on the governor, and I'm going to repeat these three asks on the governor and the commissioner of education to extend the flexibility in reporting and funding for each and every one of our school districts until the end of this school year. Create that stability. Guarantee no cuts, zero cuts to the education budget. Keep the money that was promised for the 2021 school year in place. Bring some financial stability to our districts. And lastly, ensure transparency in everything that's happening as it relates to COVID in our schools. Allow districts to report that information, to stay ahead of any COVID spread, to reduce the chances of folks in our schools contracting COVID, and to keep our students and staff safe. That is a commitment that this governor and this commissioner of education should make without hesitation. And that is what we are asking. And now I'm going to turn it over to Sharon so we can open it up to questions.
Thank you, Andrew. I want to remind reporters, if you have a question, to raise your hand by pressing the raise hand icon or dialing *9 if you're on the phone. We have some questions. I can't, it's a web or email address. McLean?
Yes, this is Joe McLean from WJXT News for Jackson, Jacksonville. My question is for President Andrew Spar. Wanted to know, you're asking for transparency in COVID reporting. The Department of Health has said that it's working on what form that report is going to be taking. What would you want that report, that transparency, what would you want it to look like?
So first of all, I think we should point out, as I said earlier, we are more than a month into the school year in some counties here in Florida. It was the governor's administration who rushed the opening of schools here in the state, whether districts were ready or not. And they're saying, we'll get that report to you soon. That doesn't give any confidence to me, not just as an employee who works in our schools, but as a parent of two daughters in our public schools. I want to know what's happening in their schools. You literally can have a situation where a child is in a classroom and there could be one, there could be two, there could be 3 COVID cases, and I have no idea. They could be quarantining a couple of students in a class, or multiple students in a class. Maybe they're quarantining an entire class. Maybe there's multiple classes in a school that are quarantined, and I don't have that information. And as a parent, and I'm sure our other parents would agree, if you don't know what's happening in a school, how do you make the best decisions for the health of your child and the people who work in your family? So that's a real question. And it's true for our employees too. They're not being told as well whether or not students are diagnosed with quarantine or other adults they may have come in contact with in their schools, or if classrooms are being quarantined. They're not being given that information. The only way they get it is through the rumor mill. And that's not how this is supposed to work. That's not transparency.
I just have one quick follow-up to that. Is there sets of data that you would want, the specific sets of data, whether it be the number of quarantine, the number of positive cases, delineation between students and staff? What specific data do you want the state to release?
All of the above. What we've been asking for in the transparency is the number of cases by school of students and adults, and the number of people who are quarantined by school. We also want transparency in how the process is working with quarantining. The Department of Health has asked teachers to provide a seating chart. That seating chart doesn't give dimensions. It doesn't say whether or not a child is 6 foot apart from another child. It doesn't take into account that our kids may interact during the day, or when they're going in and out of the classroom, or to the cafeteria, or to special area classrooms. So it's kind of really disingenuous for the Department of Health to use a seating chart to decide who should be quarantined in this process. This should be about getting ahead of it. I'll give a great example. The University of South Florida has been testing students on campus on a regular basis. They're testing, I think they said 8 to 10% of their students every day. They're testing wastewater from buildings. They're finding out where COVID is. They're isolating. They're acting quickly. They're quarantining. They're preventing the spread, and it's working. But in our schools, we're doing none of that. None of that. There's very little testing going on in our schools. It's not random. It's not in any kind of way that could diagnose COVID. And we're not getting ahead of the curve because the Department of Health, quite honestly, is trying to suppress this information.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody.
Absolutely.
Andrew Atterbury, I'm going to unmute you, and please unmute yourself.
Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Andrew Atterbury from Politico. Thank you all for having this and discussing these things. My question is, I'm wondering about, our economically disadvantaged students in Florida, or minority students, are they getting the resources they need, like specifically computers and Wi-Fi for distance learning? I've heard of some issues coming up, but I'm looking for more, concrete things about how this is going on the ground.
So what we are hearing and we are seeing is that we have a lot of students, and I mentioned this in my comments, who are unaccounted for right now in just about every district. And it seems like a lot of those students tend to be in our most underserved communities. And so I know districts are working really hard to find where these students are, but I think a lot of the chaos and confusion at the beginning of the has created some uncertainties. And so parents didn't necessarily know what to do. And often when parents don't know what to do, they may not do anything. And so that's a real concern. As far as technology, I said this earlier, this is a community issue. Somehow it's become the responsibility of every school district to solve every problem of every community. This requires businesses coming together. This requires parents coming together. This requires real leadership at all levels to really talk about how do we make sure there's quality internet access for every child who may be at home. Because keep in mind, we should be driving on solutions, not just waiting for problems to happen. When we quarantine a classroom, Orange County, Angie might be able to talk about it, had a high school they had to close. Kids had to go on remote learning for 14 days. You've got to have a system in place that helps parents with their jobs. We heard about parents having to quit jobs to protect their kids. This is not how we should operate as a society, but it's not just a school district challenge. Angie, I don't know if you want to add to that, since you guys have had a school you've had to close.
Sure. Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, we did have to close one of our high schools, and we had to pivot to launch ed. The biggest issues we're having here in Orange County is devices. We're having a hard time because everybody in Florida is looking for devices, and we had a lot of devices that worked well in the classroom, but the mic was broken or the camera was broken, so they couldn't take those devices home because they they wouldn't work. You have to have a microphone and a camera, obviously, to do launch ed here in Orange County. So we have issues like that. So we did have to close down the high school, mainly due to the amount of teachers that we had to quarantine. We couldn't keep it open because we wouldn't have had enough staff actually to teach. So we work in conjunction with the Department of Health here locally, and it's the Department of Health that determines if we're going to keep open or close the school. But we've definitely had challenges, and it was challenging for the teachers. We had to cancel football games, we had to cancel sports, so it's been hard on the teachers, the parents, and the students.
And actually, Andrew, I want to add one more thing to that. And I know it's happening in Polk, and I'm sure it's happening everywhere else that aren't already one-to-one device counties. Polk is not a one-to-one device county. We started this at probably a 3-to-1 before this. And so what they've done to accommodate our e-school, and we're doing Schoology, we're calling it Campus e-school in Polk, but our Campus e-school kids got all of our technology. They gutted our schools of technology. And so our kids, which tend to be our more vulnerable populations that have to go back to brick and mortar because their parents can't stay home. And so our already at-risk populations are having to be forced into brick and mortar, whether their parents really wanted that decision for them or not, because of economic situations at home. Their schools have been gutted of devices, and therefore they have no technology right now. And face-to-face teachers are being told that they have to do Schoology lessons too, in the event that a school or a class is quarantined, but there's no technology on campus to get that done for whole classes. And so that's what we're also experiencing too. And I'm sure other districts are that weren't already one-to-one. And so the poor planning, not really even at the district level, but the forced reopening from the state down to our districts put everybody in a bind, and it's been chaos.
Thank you.
Andrew, do you have any follow-up questions? Andrew,
That was really helpful. Thank you so much. I do have one quick follow-up question. When it comes to extending the hold harmless, is that, and this might be a simple question, is that because y'all are expecting like enrollment declines throughout the year? Because I have heard that there have been a lot of projections have been coming a lot lower, particularly among kindergarten students. Is that why the hold harmless is necessary?
Yeah, the hold harmless is necessary for two reasons, right? The one is the fact that we do have students who haven't shown up, and based on projections. And so almost every district, if not every district in Florida, is dealing with that. But the other reason the hold harmless is important is the commissioner's emergency order talked about through October. And there's another count in February, and there's flexibility in that. The flexibility that has been allowed through October's count is this notion of parents who may have their kids at home and parents who have sent their kids to school, that they're counting all of those students. And if he doesn't grant the flexibility through the end of the year in a written form, now I know he may have said it here or there, but we're saying put it in writing, because when it's in writing, it's more of a sure thing, and that's what districts are counting on. And so that flexibility will allow for the funding to continue and the reporting flexibility to continue through decisions as to how they staff schools, how they support programs, how they get the technology in place when it's available. All of that's based on the funding they have available.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
You're welcome.
Teresa, I'm going to unmute you. Please unmute yourself to ask your question.
Good morning. This is Teresa from the Florida channel. I was just wondering, you all have the ongoing lawsuit against the state, and I'm wondering how you plan to compel, because they continue to fight you on some of the same things that you've asked for in the lawsuit. How are you going to compel them? What is it going to take to get the leaders to hear you and to address some of your concerns?
So I think one of the reasons we want to do this press conference is, like I said, we're a little over a month into the school year in some of our districts. Some districts were completing 2 weeks. But you can see on this screen, we have parents, we have a school board member, we have leaders from around the state. This is not working the way we think it should work. This is a difficult time. And with difficult times, with these challenging times that we have, we need to have additional supports and assurances. And so, we can't compel the governor to do anything. The public can build pressure. And as Antonio said, this should not be a political decision. And we fear sometimes that's what's happening. We want this to be a decision based on our kids. The governor and the commissioner said that when they were forcing this reopening and rushing this reopening, that this was about kids learning. Everyone on this screen, I believe, will agree that the best place for our students is in our public schools and in those classrooms. The social and emotional well-being dictates that. The learning dictates that. The fact that our public schools bring community together dictates that. And the fact, as Stephanie said earlier, that the economy is based often on our public schools, a large chunk of the economy. That is all important in this work, and that's where we want to be. But if we don't have the supports and assurances and can't implement the strategies we know are vitally important to protect the health and safety of our students and people who work in our schools, then we can't make that happen. So we are going to do everything we can, and we are not going to stop speaking up for our students and for the people who work in our schools until we get these issues addressed.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Teresa. Jeff, you're next. I'm unmuting you. Please unmute yourself.
Are you talking to me?
Yes, I'm talking to you.
Oh, awesome. Thanks. Hi, Jeff Solachek, Tampa Bay Times. I don't know. I can direct this at anyone because we're hearing a lot of talk about teachers who are retiring, resigning, and taking leaves. Yet sometimes districts are saying the numbers are no different than any other year. And I was hoping you might be able to quantify and explain this a little bit more, because if it's just the same as every other year, as some districts are saying, then it seems a little less compelling of an issue.
So I can tell you that we have put in this week a public records request to every district to get the information. That's the data is what's going to show us that. What we have seen so far in several districts that have provided us this information, or our locals have gotten this information, is that our retirements are, in a lot of cases, are double what they typically are. Our resignations are about double what they typically are. Our leave of absences are more than 5 times in some cases what they typically are. Hillsborough is one example where we've seen that they typically have about 100 to 150 leave of absences in any given year, and they're looking at somewhere over 500 leave of absences this year. St. Lucie County, we just got that the other day. They average about 8 to 10 leave of absences in any given year, and I think they had about 50 leave of absences this school year. So the numbers are showing that we're seeing a lot of people retire early, or take or resign, or take a leave of absence. Leave of absences seems to be the path that a lot of people are taking. But look at some of this, which I think is important, Jeff, and I'm kind of glad you brought it up, is the stress and anxiety as well as the health. It's not just the health concerns, it's also the stress and anxiety. So in districts where teachers are having to teach on a computer screen, similar to what we're looking at now, where they see a bunch of faces, and they're having to teach students in person, you heard it. I think it was which parent it was that mentioned it, but there's this issue of kids in the classroom. And if you're doing something with kids in the classroom, it's not always transferable to what you're doing with kids on the computer. When you're planning a lesson in the classroom, you may hand out materials. Well, you have to have made sure you've uploaded it for the kids who are on the computer. They're totally different modalities of how you teach. And some people don't think about it. I'm looking at this screen right now. And if I'm looking at this screen and I'm looking at one of the participants, they don't know I'm looking at them, right? Teachers, you often hear teachers say they have eyes in the back of their head. It doesn't work so well on a computer screen. If I'm looking at a kid in a classroom, I can look right at that kid, get that kid's attention, use proximity, and a lot of other methodologies for keeping that student on task. If I'm looking at a computer screen, probably have to use voice commands more. I have to be more alert. I might have to tell them to turn on their camera. I might have to tell them to turn off their camera because maybe there's something going on in the background that's not appropriate for kids to see. How am I diverting my attention between 10 boxes on a screen and the 10 children in a classroom in an effective way? It's not possible. It's not educationally sound. It's not physically possible. And it's depriving students in the classroom and on the computer and creating an enormous stress level for teachers. One teacher said to me, and I thought this was great, on the first day of school, they were end of the year tired. end of the year.
Can I ask you a question related to that? Because the whole idea of simultaneous teaching, we've been hearing here in Pinellas County that it was done to keep distances spread apart in the classrooms, and we have to give something to get something. And what do you make of that argument? Because people want to have the social distancing and they want to have good education, and sometimes they don't always go together as well as people would like.
I think a lot of it, Jeff, is resources, which is why if we can get some stability, we know a lot of districts are planning for potential cuts this year. You know, as much as people say it's not going to happen, there's no legislative session. Look, we all know it's an election season. No one's going to say there's going to be a special session to potentially make cuts to the education budget because we're in an election season. I get that. But if we can get some strong assurances that there will not be cuts to the education budget and that flexibility is going to be allowed, then these districts are freer to spend some of those dollars they've been holding back and get them to the places. Bottom line is, we heard early on, this is all about making sure our students are getting the education, that high quality education they're entitled to. And what we're hearing is that's not happening as well as it should and could. And we need the leadership and the assurances to make sure we can do that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
That's all the questions that we have right now. Unless, Dara, you had raised your hand, but it was down. Do you have a question, Dara?
Her hand's back up.
Her hand's back up. Okay. I've unmuted you.
Okay. Hi, thank you. I appreciate you taking my question, and I appreciate your time this morning. I was wondering, maybe this is for the school board member or you or any of the FEA folks. With the testing, since it's the Department of Health that's responsible for doing the testing, how you're not getting the results, they're not letting you know what the status is within your schools. Have the school board members thought about coming up with their own way of conducting tests?
Angie, I'll let you start with that one.
Thank you. So here in Orange County, we actually have a very close relationship with the Department of Health, and we've created a COVID-19 dashboard. So you could go to our website and you can search by school and by day the number of cases that we have in our county. We're getting ready to add the quarantine numbers as well. So we're trying to be as transparent as possible here in Orange County, but we do depend on the Department of Health for the contact tracing and for the testing. And we're also working with them to test all of our football players. They're getting rapid testing every 2 weeks because it's a high contact sport, to ensure the safety and the health of our community and our schools. So I think here in Orange County, we've worked really well with our Department of Health. I can't speak for other counties.
Thank you.
And let me just add that, you know, what we asked for early on in this is consistent and regular testing of our teachers, our staff, and students. You know, that's what we think it takes. That is what we've heard from all of these medical experts. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I'm a music teacher. And so, you know, what we have to go on is what these medical experts are saying. So we heard it from Dr. Birx, we heard it from Dr. Fauci, we've heard it from the CDC. Testing, testing, testing. And I'm not talking academic testing here, but testing for COVID is what helps you identify and quickly react so that you don't have spread. And so unless school districts have allocated resources, as Angie was just talking about, maybe with football players or certain things, it's just not happening to the level that we probably should see. And quite honestly, we've seen the governor come out and suppress some of that testing. We've seen the Department of Health in a lot of places be told not to share some of that information. We saw a report on school districts go up and then come down. So now you have Orange County having to figure out how to report it. You have Seminole County figuring out, Miami-Dade figuring out. Everyone's trying to figure out their own thing because there's been a void of leadership, which I think is intentional. But if we want to create the safest environment possible, then we need to make sure there is testing and accurate reporting and transparency, and that we can trust it. And so that's where we're at right now. And I think there needs to be more done from a statewide perspective on that to support that kind of approach to making sure that everyone is safe and healthy in our schools.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Seeing no more questions, thank you, reporters and everyone today. If you have additional questions, follow-up questions, or would like a copy of the recording, please contact Joni Branch. Her name and contact information is in the press release. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. I want to thank all our folks who were on, and thank you to all the reporters for joining us today.